and salt spray everywhere. Look at that chicken strutting like it owns the whole fog. See how that fox watches you, as if considering a toll fee for my genius. Perhaps a giant SOS signal painted on the beach will catch the eye of passing sailors. Shiny enough to blind a passing galleon. I think a proper docking pier is next. Maybe I'll start fashioning some decorative railings for it. Remember back in the city, before all this beautiful, wonderful nothingness, I once saw a clock tower strike noon, and the sound felt so solid, like a physical thing you could cup in your hands. I was waiting for a connection, you know, one train coming in from the north that was supposed to take me right back to my proper life, the one with schedules and printed manifests. I stood on that platform, feeling all those impatient feet shuffling around me, a restless sea of wool coats and hurried goodbyes. The air smelled thick, a strange mix of coal smoke and cheap perfume, and I kept glancing at my pocket watch, ticking away against the immense weight of expectation. Then, just as the great bronze bell began to toll, there was this little girl, maybe 7 years old, standing near the ticket booth, wearing a dress the color of bruised plums. She wasn't looking at the tracks or the departing train. She was looking up at the clock face, her face utterly serious, like she understood the passage of time better than anyone I'd ever met. She reached up a small finger and pointed, not at the hands, but at the minute hand itself, as if marking some profound secret only she knew. And then, the great whistle blew, a shrieking blast that scattered the crowd like startled pigeons, and she just smiled, a quick, knowing little flash, before melting back into the throng. It was a moment of pure, perfect timing, Wilson, and it haunts me sometimes. Geez, this little scrape is the end of days. It feels like the crushing weight of the whole ocean floor has caught me. I swear this island is actively trying to bury me alive. So watch me claw free of this earth's grip. You know, last night, I dreamt the island itself was speaking to me, and it sounded like the tide pulling away from the rocks at dawn. It didn't use words, not really, but more like a deep, slow hum, a resonance in the very roots of the giant palms. It kept pointing, or I think it was the wind pointing toward the deepest cove, the one with the oddly shaped stones. It seemed to whisper, or maybe the sand was whispering, that it wanted something in return for keeping me alive, something that held the memory of rush and routine. I thought, what could it possibly want? A song, my ridiculous, terrible singing. Then, I looked down at Wilson, at his painted smile, and I suddenly knew what it meant. I walked down to the waterline and started stacking the smoothest, darkest pieces of driftwood I could find, building a massive, unstable tower right where the gentle current usually plays. As the final log settled into place, a deep, satisfying thunk echoed, and the humming stopped, replaced by a sound like a huge, contented sigh, and the stars seemed to shine a little brighter just for that. Blast it all, this muddy embrace is a death trap, a muddy betrayal. I'm clawing out of this terrestrial snare with nothing but sheer, glorious stubbornness. Curious little snout rooting through my perfect little garden patch. You pig have excellent taste in mud, I must say. Gather close, you hear? Let me tell you about the time I found the big, iridescent shell, the one that caught the moonlight just right. It was near the tide pools, where the seaweed smells like old pennies, and I was just poking around, convinced I'd find some lost piece of civilization. The shell wasn't gold, mind you. It was a milky, pearlescent blue, the color of the sky right before a summer storm breaks. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it, and it was surprisingly warm, almost humming against my palm. I kept thinking it must belong to some grand creature, something that swam past that wasn't of this little patch of paradise. Then, I saw it, a perfect, impossibly straight line of tracks etched into the damp sand, like a giant claw had dragged across the beach. My heart gave a genuine little skip. Wilson. A real jolt, because those tracks didn't belong to any bird or crab I knew. They were too deliberate, too organized, like something heavy, something with purpose, had walked right by us in the fading twilight. I never saw what made them, but I stared at those tracks until the tide crept in and erased them entirely, leaving nothing but wet, unremarkable sand. This damp little pocket of earth is clinging to me like a jealous lover. I will tear myself from this cruel embrace with my bare hands. You just wait. You know, I remember the day I figured out the weather oath. The wind had been playing tricks on me, blowing off the coast in these bizarre, unpredictable gusts. I found that strange, humming stone nestled among the roots, and it seemed to pulse with the ocean's rhythm. When the breeze came from the south that morning, smelling sharply of damp earth, I swore my promise of gratitude right there on the sand. I stood there until my throat was raw, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun bake the salt crust onto my skin, knowing I was finally weaving some kind of order into this beautiful chaos. built a wall today. It keeps nothing out, but it makes the loneliness feel more organized. Stars overhead are like spilled sugar sprinkled across black velvet, really a perfect night for dream building. Gazing out now, the jungle canopy looks like 1,000 emerald teeth against the deep indigo sky. Indeed, the little village is taking shape, a proper little corner of civilization right here on this patch of sand. Crimson light catches the fluff on that passing creature. It looks like a cloud decided to take a very slow walk across the island floor. By the stars, this minute divot is the ultimate cosmic insult. How dare this patch of dirt challenge my very existence? I shall peel myself from this earthen vise like a stubborn barnacle, Wilson. Good heavens, this dirt has got the grip of 1,000 angry tentacles. I swear I'm wedged tighter than a shipwrecked anchor. Lit the whole town tonight. From above it almost looks like somebody lives here. Somebody does. It's me. Suddenly remembering the day the coconuts fell like golden, wet coins on the thatched roof. It wasn't the storm that sticks with me. It was the smell, a sharp, sweet must mixing with a brine, right as the sun hit the damped jungle floor. I was so preoccupied trying to wedge those big, fallen husks into a neat pile for later, admiring how the wet fibers clung to each other like wet hair. I remember looking up, feeling that glorious weight shift overhead and seeing the perfect, impossible arc of those nuts falling. They didn't just drop, they seemed to drift down in a slow, deliberate curtain, each one catching the light just before it hit the dirt. I thought, maybe the sky itself was weeping a shower of edible treasures, a heavenly mistake. Then, one